Scott Peterson, okay? Big news in the Scott Peterson case. We'll get to all the details in just a moment. But I do realize that that case was a while ago, and maybe not everyone remembers who Scott Peterson is, or maybe you're too young to even know who Scott Peterson is. Well, there were some things that happened this summer that impacted his case, his conviction. Ted Rowlands has more for us tonight.
In a unanimous opinion, the California Supreme Court reversed the death sentence against Scott Peterson, saying the trial court made a series of clear and significant errors in jury selection. At issue is the fact that several potential jurors were dismissed solely because they wrote on questionnaires that they were against the death penalty, even though the jurors gave no indication that their views would prevent them from following the law. The court, however, rejected Peterson's claim that he did not receive a fair trial and affirmed his convictions for murder. Scott Peterson was found guilty of murdering his pregnant wife, Lacey, and their unborn son, Connor, in 2003. The case received unprecedented media attention, which Peterson's appellate attorney, Cliff Garner, argued should have resulted in a second change of venue.
Of the nearly 50% that had reached a decision, 98.5% thought he was guilty, and 6 jurors thought he was innocent, out of the 1,000 that had completed questionnaires at the time the change of venue motion was raised.
The Supreme Court rejected that argument, saying the publicity the Peterson trial generated, like the trials of O.J. Simpson and the Manson family, and any other number of so-called trials of the century before them, was intrinsic to the case, not the place. Therefore, the court found that moving the trial to another location a second time would not have solved the problem of excessive publicity. Peterson's other arguments, that jurors should not have been able to stand in his boat during jury deliberations and that cadaver dog evidence was flawed, were also rejected by the court. California has not carried out a death sentence since 2006 and currently has a moratorium on executions.
All right, now let's get to today's enormous news, and we're going to bring in the guy who knows more about this case than anyone other than the lawyers, including Strawberry Shortcake, Court TV anchor Ted Rowlands, with us tonight. All right, I'm sitting down. Everyone at home, sit down, please. Ted, give us the big news, the big headline for today.
So Scott Peterson's getting a new trial, but it's not the new trial that he wanted. It is a retrial of the penalty phase. The state Supreme Court said he needs to either have life without parole, or if you want to retry him, Stanislaus County in Modesto, California, go ahead, you can do that. Well, today we found out that prosecutors there said, yes, we want to retry Scott Peterson for the penalty phase, meaning they're going to bring in a new group of jurors and ask this group of jurors, should this individual get the death penalty? That's all that's on the table for this group of jurors. There's another case pending, another appeal pending. We'll talk about that later. But what we found out today was the big news. Most people thought, oh, they're not going to retry the penalty. Well, they'll just let him rot in jail for the rest of his life. No, they want to retry him for the death penalty. They want his death penalty back on the table. They want him to go to death row and wait in line to be executed by the state of California. It was a big day, and one would think it was a horrible day for Scott Peterson. Well, I talked to his lawyer, Pat Harris, this afternoon, and he says, not really. Actually, this is good news for us, too. Take a listen.
I think it's a good thing for Scott Peterson because it's going to give us a chance to do 15 years later what we had hoped to do back in 2005, which was to show a jury that, in fact, he was and should not be put to death. And I think that we'll have a new opportunities. There's going to be, because of the circumstances here and the fact that there's going to be new jurors, we're going to have to go through the evidence again, even though it's just the death penalty phase. We would have to go through all the evidence again. So I think it gives us new opportunities to show his innocence. So I think it's a positive thing for him in the long run.
So they're going to maybe go from the scratch. Well, not totally from scratch, but they do have to build the case for this jury. They can't just say, hey, this guy was convicted of killing his wife and baby. What do you think we should do with him? They have to go through the evidence. Meaning we could see Amber Fry back on the stand. We could see the detectives, Brokini, back on the stand under cross-examination. We'll have to wait and see. I asked Pat Harris, what really is new, though, between now and then?
I think there's a major difference, a couple of major differences. One is that for 15 years later, emotions were running extraordinarily high at that time. Clearly, we believe that a lot of the verdict was based on emotion and not on the evidence. I think 15 years later, you don't see those same emotions. You may see a lot of the same opinions. There may be a lot of people who still feel he's guilty, but you're not dealing with the emotion.
Today, Vinny, in that hearing in Modesto, Stanislaus County, where I think we first met in that courtroom, Janie Peterson was there, Joe Peterson was there, a handful of members of the media, others joined by Zoom. Scott Peterson was in attendance from San Quentin wearing a blue mask and a blue prison uniform. He did not say anything. He was not addressed by the judge or anybody, but he just sat there with his mask on, listening. This was continued till November 6th. We should get more answers then.
All right. So for everyone at home, this is going to be the trial. I mean, I've covered a few of these retrials of the penalty phase, and the evidence comes in. You have to put the evidence in. You need to put the evidence in because you need the jury to understand what this man did to Laci and what he did to Connor. And to understand that, you've got to try the case. So we're going to see the retrial of Scott Peterson, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. How did he look? I know he had the mask on. How's the hair looking? Because he used to have dark hair until he was trying to flee, and then he jumped in the pool, he said, and the chlorine turned it red. Is he kind of getting like me now a little salt and pepper, or maybe a lot of salt, not so much pepper? What's going on there?
Dark and very short hair. So the last prison mugshot, if you remember that one, very short hair. That's basically how he looked today. Still dark, not getting gray yet, Vinny, but I'm sure he's got a lot to worry about.
Maybe life's too easy on death row. You know? Okay, so let's take a step back now. The defense has other things in play here, right? Because ultimately they want a brand new trial, right? So what's going on that front? Because, they're starting to run out of appeals, aren't they?
Well, yeah, anyone on death row gets two sets of appeals, right? Your direct appeal, which talks about the case and what went wrong in the case, what you think didn't happen in the case that should have. That's one thing. That's what they're dealing with now with the reversal on the death sentence. The other side of the coin is called the habeas. That is a chance to bring in new evidence that wasn't brought in at trial. That has also been seen by the Supreme Court of California, and they decided, hey, there is something here that is concerning, and that is the conduct of Strawberry Shortcake. You mentioned her at the top. That's one of the jurors who, according to Peterson's appellate lawyers, lied about her past, lied to get on the jury, and had suffered when she was pregnant a threat to her baby, saying, and they argue that was too much. She was one of just two holdouts early on in the deliberations for a guilty verdict. They say it's very significant. The state Supreme Court agrees. They sent that back down to San Mateo. So now it's up to the San Mateo court to litigate it. It will likely go back to the Supreme Court, and that's what Peterson is holding his breath on. He wants a new trial that at the end of the day, he could potentially be found not guilty.
So is this going to be a situation where they're going to put jurors on the witness stand and try to figure out what's going on here? Is that how this whole thing could play out, that you could bring in the juror known as Strawberry Shortcake, throw her on the stand, swear her in, and try to get to the bottom of whatever they're alleging here?
I think you have to, because the state Supreme Court is instructing the local prosecutors to prove to us that he doesn't deserve a new trial. So how do you do that? You have to really go through piece by piece. And the big part of that equation is this one juror. Bring her on, put her under oath, subject her to cross-examination. And at the end of the day, that will determine whether or not Scott Peterson gets a new trial.
All right. I foresee a little cart before the horse here thing going on right now, right? So we're going to have a retrial of the penalty phase, and there's still an outstanding issue for the guilt phase. So was there any discussion today about, hey, before we retry the penalty phase, why don't we see if we have to retry the guilt phase, or are they just not concerned about that?
I'm sure they're concerned about it. No discussion about it today. Likely that'll happen on November 6th. They continued today's hearing. And you're right, because there's no point in bringing in a jury, retrying this only to have San Mateo say yes or no, and then the Supreme Court of California to say he deserves a new trial. So likely what will happen is they'll set the table, they'll set some dates, knowing that they want San Mateo to go first. Get that out of the way, then retry him on this penalty phase. But the bottom line is Scott Peterson is going to be back in a courtroom in one of the two jurisdictions with a new trial. It might be a guilt phase trial, or it may be an actual new trial. I asked Pat Harris, what are you doing? Why are you representing him again? He was part of the team the first time around. Here's what he said.
Because he's stone cold innocent. I believe that from day one. I spent 3 months visiting Scott every day in a jail cell in Modesto. I got to know him better than probably anyone. I think I know the evidence in this case probably better than anyone other than Scott and Lacey. I believe, and I have believed from the very beginning, he is innocent. I think the evidence shows that. I think the additional investigation that's been done over the last 15 years simply adds to that and makes it clear that he's an innocent man. And as any, I believe, this is why lawyers go to law school. This is what you want to practice. You want to help innocent people, and that's what I'm doing in this case.
So, Vinny, the vast majority of people that have followed this case believe Scott Peterson is guilty. There is a small group, though, that has questions about it, and Pat Harris, obviously one of those people. And you notice that stone cold innocent remark. That's the same thing Mark Garagos said outside the courthouse in Stanislaus County after his first hearing, after he was arrested.
Yeah, he's cold, but not innocent. I mean, he's been convicted, so up until the point that he's not convicted, he is presumed guilty at this point, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. He is a guilty man. He's guilty of killing his wife and his unborn son.
All right, so we're going to continue to track this, and we got to, follow the bouncing balls here, because we got two potential trials out there. One could happen, out of the wrong order, and we could end up with a law school question here at the end of it. But Ted Rowlands, who knows this case inside out better than anyone, thank you so much on this Friday night.
Have a great weekend. Thanks.